been very, very nice to us, and because there's sort of a giving nature in the whole programming community, to actually build code and share it with everyone. So code that they can use whenever, whenever we actually want. So we can download it, we can install it, and we can use those functions, so we don't have to worry about building everything from scratch, which would take a while. But let's talk a little bit about what all of these means. So we've used a lot of the tools in Python, and all of them are included. They come with what's called the standard Python package. So everything from the print function to how to lists, to dictionaries, to for loops, that all comes just with the regular Python package, and those are tools for us to use. And of course, when we run into errors, we fix them. So generally, we do need to figure out how to solve problems when we're doing programming, because we want to do things, and most of the time, they're going to be things that we've never done before, at least at the very beginning. So we're going to have to use the internet, and we're going to have to use Google. And the big advantage is that programming has been around for quite a while. So just to give you an idea, Python's been around since about 1993, 94, if I'm not mistaken, when Guido van Rossum first launched that into the world. And this means that there's a lot of people who have done a lot of code before us, and they've shared their answers. They've figured out, they struggled with it before, and they share their solutions with us. So that means that, for example, if you go into Google and post a problem, you'll probably find a solution for it in a site that we'll see in just a bit if you haven't already. It's called, which is Stack Overflow. So just put in Google and probably your first answer will come up in Stack Overflow. The other big advantage with Python is that it's one of the most used languages, especially today. It's at #1, meaning that there's a lot, it's a very, very big and very active and very, very generous community. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there. Everything is out there. So again, there is not one single programmer alive, not one, doesn't matter who they think they are, who does not use the internet to figure out what to do with their code, because they're always going to run into new things. Yeah, Python's been around since just a little bit before the beginning of the internet. And by the way, Python was created using another programming language called C. So again, one programmer decided to build another programming language with a much more complex programming language, and just to make our lives easier. Yes. So that's the wonders of the world of programming. So don't try to be the exception. I'm definitely not. Every time I want to solve a new problem and I can't figure it out, I go to the internet to figure it out. I used the internet a lot when I was learning how to code. And again, we're not ever going to be the exceptions. And one of the reasons is because of what I was talking before, that every time someone builds something, we can build on top of it and so on. So again, think about this. Somebody took a programming language called C, which is a little bit more complex because it's closer to the hardware. So it's much more verbose, and created what's called a high-level programming language, which is Python, which is actually a lot simpler and can do a lot more stuff with less lines of code. So yes, thanks for reminding me. I haven't used C++ in a decade. Yes, C++ is also a little bit, yeah, I can understand. So there's tons of programming languages, and some of them can be a little bit more complex and more verbose. But yes, but again, we have Python today. That's great. So a lot of these people have actually, very experienced programmers have actually built a lot of stuff for us. You'll probably find, and I actually forgot his name, but you'll probably find a very funny anecdote from a creator of a very famous Python package called FastAPI, who actually was looked for a job post. He saw that they were looking for somebody that had 10 years of experience with FastAPI, and he applied to the job, and they said, no, you don't have enough experience. And I'm like, well, that's hard. I created this 6 years ago, so I don't know where you're going to find somebody that has 10 years experience on this app, on this particular library. So that kind of things happens. So again, these are people who are building a lot of code that we can use to make our lives a lot easier. So again, instead of us having to do the functions from scratch, we can actually use what other people have done. This is a very big joke. This, by the way, this account, I am a developer in Twitter, is brilliant. It's called Programming Progression. So at year 0, I know nothing. Years 1 to 2, I know some things. Years 3 to 4, I don't know what I don't know. Years 4 to 4.5, I know everything. And then from years 4.5 to 10 plus, you go back to knowing absolutely nothing. But again, just a joke. At the end of the day, once you learn how to code, things become a lot simpler. In other words, once you learn your first language, it's going to be a lot easier to learn your second, your third, if you want to learn more languages. But again, with a language like Python, you can do almost anything you can think of. There are libraries and packages for everything. So today, we're going to jump in to do exactly that. How to import external libraries, meaning code that is not originally, that does not come 100% standard Python, and how to install packages that are completely from the outside. So somebody else built it. This does not come when you download Python, but you can still get it and install it. And of course, we're going to learn how to solve a few common issues by either going through the documentation for these Python libraries or using Google, and specifically using Stack Overflow, which you'll see it has a lot of information. Great. So let's talk first about external libraries. So again, it is very, very rare and unusual that we actually write a program 100% from scratch. So just to give you an idea, you wouldn't imagine if you had to build a program that, and from scratch, you had to teach the program how to sum, how to do subtraction, how to do division. You know, it's already solved. Why do we want to do it again? And that's the whole idea with coding. So since we're not going to be doing it 100% from scratch, like calculating the square root of a number, which even though it seems like a simple thing, but the thing is that some of the things that we think are obvious do not actually come standard. So one of the packages that we're going to find that we can actually use most of the time, for example, if we want to do some more advanced math, is the math package. All right. So the math package is sort of already inside Python, but it doesn't get loaded on the first time when we're just using Python, because we don't necessarily need it. So if we want to use it, we actually have to do something called importing it. All right. So the way we import it is by using this code over here. So you use the word import. That's how we import that particular code and the name of whatever package it is. So in this case, math. So once we import math, then we can use the functions that come inside the math package. So for example, if we wanted to run this code in particular, we can actually just, so a equals 36, and we want to calculate the square root. So b is going to be math, which is the name of the package, and square root is the name of the function inside that package. So again, instead of having to build a whole function called square root, we are just importing it from this math package. So again, we're calling the math package and we're calling the square root function of a in this case. So if we run this, we should actually get the answer on, let me just, there's no, so let me actually run Python. Let's run this code, Python code.py. And we get 6, which is what we expect because the square root of 36 is 6. Now, this is one way to do the package. If we were going to use several or many of the functions from the math package, we want to import all of the package. But it turns out we don't actually have to import everything. We can actually just decide to import one part of it. So if we only need one function, we can actually import that one function. And we can do it like this. So instead of import math, so import math again, this is going to import the whole package, all of the functions that come in this package. And I'll show you how to look at what functions are available. But if we just wanted one function, in this case, the function called sqrt or square root. So I would go from math, import sqrt. So, oops, sqrt. So what I'm telling it is from this math package, from this library, please just import this function. And that's it. So if I run this, I have the square root function available, but nothing else. Anything else that comes in the math package at this point in time is not available because I didn't import it. So in this case, I can go a equals 36 once again. Now, because I only imported the function and not the whole package, I don't actually need to call the whole name of the package to actually use the function. I can just do b equals sqrt and a. So this is the only difference. If I import the whole package, the whole math package, I actually have to call it like this. So math dot and the name of the function. In this case, I only call the function. All right. I'll get to the questions in just a bit. So just to show you that this actually works. So let's actually print B, and this should actually get me the same answer because I'm actually using the same function. And yes. All right. So yes, Claudia, you could definitely build libraries in the future, and you can upload into the Piple code base, and people could actually use them. It happens very often, by the way. So a lot of people actually create code and just share it with the world. And then they start telling everybody that they built it, because that's also how you make your name as a programmer. Does the math source file known to import? So just to give you an idea, the whole math library is part of called the Python standard package. So it doesn't load automatically. That's why we have to import it. But it does exist in the Python standard package. So all we have to do is import it. How are these libraries actually validated? So once you upload this, there's a whole process to validate them. But so to get added into the Piple code base, but actually other people, you can actually build your own code, and you can upload it to GitHub and share it with the world, even though it's not validated. But if you do get it to the whole process with the Python organization, you can have it inside the Piple code base, which is interesting. So here, so why is this? So from math import square root specifically. So it comes like this. So two reasons. If I only do import math, then if I want to print the square root of 36, I actually have to call the math library, then the square root function, and then, fill it in with whatever it is. So the first reason is that if I'm only going to be using one function, from math import sqrt, then I'm saving a little bit of code. So that's one. Okay. Now, in the case of the math package in particular, or the math library, there's it's not a matter of memory, because it's a very small package. I mean, there's a ton of functions, but it's not very memory intensive. But here's the thing, and with libraries that you're going to learn a little bit in the not so distant future, there's something that we do need to understand. So for example, when you're using very complex libraries like for machine learning and stuff like that, then yes, they become big. These are libraries, and if you go to deep learning, these are libraries that can have gigabytes of memory. So if you're not going to use every single thing in the library, you just import the functions that you want. So, and yeah, it does save memory, and it does make you code faster, especially again, if you're only going to use a few of the functions. No, there's actually, all right. Gene, yeah, so can we import statistics like math or just math? So here's a cool thing. There is a whole package called SciPy, which is great for statistics. And there's many more, but just in case, anything you can think of nowadays, except maybe a few things, but most of the things you can probably think of nowadays, there is a package for them. And again, in the next few weeks, you're going to learn how to use libraries like pandas for working with tables, like NumPy working with numbers, with very, very hardcore numbers, which you're going to find very interesting. So there's a lot of libraries for everything, but very, very important. Yes, you can import libraries for almost anything. And we'll see how to install them if they don't come with the standard Python package. Yes, we'll get into where to find libraries, packages, etc. All right. So in this example, and let me just copy it back just in case. So what we did here, again, is we just imported one function from the math package just to make our lives easier. So we can just call it as is. Now, the important thing is that once you import a package or a function from a package, you don't need to import it again inside the same notebook or code. So you only import things once inside one program, right? You don't need to do it again. That's very important. It's not like every time you want to use it, you don't have to import it. Once you import it once, you can use it as many times as you want. If you're using Jupyter Notebooks or Colab, again, you just import it at the very beginning and then it works on the whole notebook. Now, there are tons of functions inside math. If we want to look at what's available inside math, the best thing to do is go into the documentation, which I have right here. And I'm sharing on the chat right now, just in case. So this is the code base directly from the Python library. So sorry, from the Python organization docs library. So in other words, here are all of the functions or all the mathematical functions that come with the math package. And as you can see, there's a ton of them. Let's actually just go into the square root. Let me find that over here. SQRT. Yep, that's another one. There we go. So again, it tells you right here what it does specifically. So it calculates the square root of x. And if we go inside, it tells you all of the little details of the actual function. So right here, it tells you what it is and how it works. All right. And there's tons of other functions. This one's the simple one. So again, it just tells you it returns the square root of x because that's literally all it does. Jennifer, that's a good question. So you have to run the import statement or the import code every session. So if you're running one session now and the session completely stops, then that import is done. But if, for example, once you're running it online inside any system, once you import it once, as long as it keeps running, it's going to stay in memory. So that's important. So yeah, but if you stop a session and you start over again, you have to import it again. But what I mean, you only have to import it once every time you run the code. That's it. All right. So we have the documentation. We know we can find things in here. And by the way, documentation is probably the best way to figure out what the functions inside a package do. It's all there. It might take a little bit more time to read sometimes and everything, but there you're going to understand not just what it can do, but literally it's going to help you understand what other things, how many, for example, does it only take one argument like square root? That's it. It only takes one argument, but maybe it could do other things, or there's other functions that take two arguments, what they are, what limitations there are, what other things I can do with those functions, etc. So it's always good to read the documentation, especially for functions that are good for us, that are going to help us do what we want to do. So yeah, it's absolutely critical to learn how to read documentation. And by the way, it's easy to find. So if I go into Google and I look for math package Python, oops, not Java, Python documentation, it's the first thing you're going to find. So this over here, this is math for mathematical functions. And as you can see, it's the same that we were looking at, right? And that's all of the documentation for particularly the Python. No, so you don't need, so here's the thing. You don't need to learn them all. You don't need to learn necessarily any of them, but you go into the documentation just to figure out what they do whenever you need them. So whenever you need to do something that you are not 100% sure, look in the internet, look for possibilities, look for possible packages that are going to help you. But the ones that you use most of the time, especially like, for example, the functions that you're going to be using over and over again, yes, you eventually learn them. Even if you don't learn them 100% by heart, as you keep using them, you're just going to learn them and you're just going to use them mostly automatically. That's sort of what happens after, once you keep learning or learning. Yes, or Bing or Yahoo or whatever search browser you want to use. But again, generally the Python, docspython.org, or in generally python.org, there you'll find a lot of the stuff. Not everything, but a lot. So again, there is absolutely no excuse for not being able to solve a problem that can be solved by reading the package documentation. So very important. If it's something you can solve by reading the package documentation, there is no excuse not to do that. So a good amount of bugs that you will eventually find, a lot of errors, you go into the documentation and you figure out exactly what was wrong. And again, most of the time, the error is going to tell you what's wrong. You know, it's the wrong type of input, is the wrong type of argument, etc. Or this only takes one argument and you're giving it 3. Okay, that might also happen. So again, everything in the documentation is going to tell you. So for example, if you're using the wrong data types, the documentation is going to tell you what are the accepted data types inside the function. Don't know what the result of a function represents? The documentation will tell you that. It'll tell you what the output is. Do you remember? So most of the time, do you remember when we were doing functions that we actually built the docstring? Well, all of these come with docstrings and they tell you what the input is and what the output is. And all of that is in the documentation. All right. So very important. Yes, you can ask your coworkers, you can ask your TA, you can ask your boss when you're talking about a very difficult problem, but they're going to get tired of helping you if you don't do your research first. So that's the first thing you do. You do your research, you read the documentation, and then if you can't figure it out, yes, you ask for help. Very important. But the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you go through the documentation, you search the internet, you look for help by yourself before you ask somebody else. So again, whenever you, for example, if you come to me and telling me after a lesson and say, hey, Jack, I want to learn how to use the square root function better, but because I didn't understand the documentation, that's great. If you haven't read the documentation, I'm going to suppose you did, and I might actually talk about the documentation and the specifics of it. So if you haven't read it, we might not be able to communicate as well. So again, the first thing you want to think about is make sure you read the documentation. Now, since 2023, since ChatGPT was launched, I think it was something September, October 2023, and now there's tons of large language models. People are actually using them to help code. Now, and again, this is something that I've actually seen people that are learning to code using LLMs. And although, yes, it's going to help you solve the problems, it's not going to help you learn. It's a great tool when you have experience coding because it's going to help you code faster. It's going to help you solve problems faster. But very, very important, do not rely on it when you're learning. You can rely on it after you become a programmer, after you feel comfortable with your skills as a programmer. So you have the documentation for the math package. And we're going to use it to do something in particular, which is calculate the greatest common divisor between two numbers. So again, greatest common divisor means that, let's say, what is the biggest number that we can divide this number by? So for example, if you think about 10 and 20, probably the biggest divisor is 10 because you can divide 10 by 10 equals 1 and 20 by 10 equals 2. So yeah, that's a divisor. Again, no decimal places. So what I want you to do is read the documentation, which you have over here, the math documentation, and look for what function we would have to use from the math package to actually find the greatest common divisor between two numbers. All right. So if you want a little bit of an idea of what something does, import math, you can actually just run help math. And this is what's going to happen. Oops. And this is what's going to happen. So here it's going to give you all of the functions inside the math inside your terminal. All right. So you can actually do that. So what I want you to answer by looking at it is, what is the name of the best function for this problem? So is it comp, remainder, factorial, or GCD? So great work, everyone. Yes, the function for this is GCD. And because you figured it out, let's actually, I want you to find the greatest common denominator. So I want to see what code you use. So what is the greatest common denominator between 132 and so A equals 132 and B equals 784. I want you to find the greatest common denominator between those two numbers. Feel free to print or share your answer in the chat. What is the greatest common denominator between 132 and 784? We've got a 4. We got another 4. Yep. 4, maybe. Let's actually go into the documentation and look for GDC. By the way, it's right here. It says GDC, the asterisk. This is so whenever you see an asterisk, it means it takes more than it can take several arguments, and there's no limit to them. So that's an interesting thing. So it turns out if I go specifically inside, it says math.gcd integers. So return the greatest common divisor of the specified integer arguments. So again, we can have as many as we want. If any of the arguments is non-zero, then the return value is the largest positive integer that is a divisor of all arguments. If all arguments are 0, then the return value is 0. All right, so what it's telling us is that the right answer for this, so C is going to be so math, because I imported the whole math package, GCD, and inside I put A and B, and then I just want to print C, because that would be my result. And let's see what we get. And the answer is 4. So that's interesting. So here's a question. Can I do this? Let's see, 87, 88, 22, 98, 1,980. Can I do this? Will this work? Oops, I forgot the GCD part. Very important. Now, will this work? So yeah, the answer is yes. So it's going to go through all the numbers and find the greatest common denominator. And I can just keep adding numbers, as many numbers as I want. So let's just run this to make sure. And yes, so the greatest common denominator of all those numbers is 2. That's it. All right. Let's actually try it with something different. So if I do 80, 1900, 10,000, and 1980, I should get at least 10. Oh, 20. That's even funnier. Great. So that's the great thing. If you look at the documentation, it's going to tell you all of the things that you can get. And look, very important, it takes integers only. So if I do this, it's probably going to return some kind of an error because it's not, see, it gives me an error because it doesn't take floats. It only takes integers. All right. Questions so far about importing libraries? My screen's not visible?
It is visible. I think we're going to troubleshoot this directly with the student.
Perfect. All right. So it turns out that not all packages, as we mentioned before, come with a Python standard installation. So math does, and there's tons of others. And by the way, if you want to check which ones, we just go to google.com and we can actually ask it, what packages come standard with Python? And of course, now we get the AI, but here's the Python standard library. And here it's going to tell you all of the stuff that comes with the standard package. So let me just look for packages. Python packages. Oh, no, this is the page for packages. And if you go through this, it's going to tell you all of the things that you can actually do with the Python standard execution. So for example, math. See, here's the numerical and math function modules. So everywhere you see modules, it's talking about modules. And there's tons of modules, either tools, func tools, operator. And my suggestion is, statistics, by the way, there's one for specifically called statistics for statistics. I just think SciPy is better, but again, that's just my opinion. So there's tons of stuff like OS, by the way, we used on Monday, if you remember. We used Glob also on Monday, and we didn't have to install anything. All right. So those are the packages that come with Python. But again, that's like the math package and many others, they come pre-installed. But if something is not part of the standard library, and there's stuff that we want to do, which you're going to learn a lot in the upcoming weeks, there's other packages that we need. One of those packages, if for example, is called Pillow. So Pillow is the Python 3 version. So again, Python has had several versions. We're in version 3 right now. The original package was named Pill, which is Python imaging library. Now it's a little bit bigger and does a lot more stuff. And the whole idea with this library is that it helps us manipulate images directly in Python. So it's a great library to actually start working with anything. Like if you want to work with images, you want to make it bigger, we want to cut them, we want a lot of stuff we can do with the Pillow library. But it doesn't come with the standard Python installation. So we have to import it. So the way to import something that we don't have yet, or at least the easiest way, is using the pip command. So pip actually is going to go into the Python, the grand Python repository of libraries, and it's going to find it and it's going to install it inside our Python directory. So the way we do it, and let's do it right now, is pip. We just call pip, then install, and then the name of the library we want to install, which in this case is going to be called Pillow. All right. So after I run this code, it's going to install it. And all right, it probably already installed in my computer. Let me just check to see. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, that's not going to work. So this is me doing something wrong. If you want to install, you have to do it directly on the terminal. So this is going to work. Pip install Pillow. So again, when you want to install, you don't do it in your Python code, you do it directly on your terminal because it's installing something inside your, in this case, inside my workspace, it's going to install it directly onto your computer. So once I run this, now it's working. And it's going to take a little bit of time to actually go through everything. It's going to collect it, it's going to download it, and it's going to install it. Now, remember, once you install it, you don't need to install it again. It's done. It's installed. As long as you keep using the same folder, the same computer, the same environment, it's going to work. All right. So again, everything's installed, everything's working. And once it's done, so this is what we expect, successfully installed Pillow 11.2.1. If it's already installed, it's probably going to tell us that it's already installed. So if I try to run pip install again on my workspace, it says requirement satisfied, Pillow in home. So it's already there. So you can always run it without having the risk of having to install it again. If you run it and it's there, it's just going to tell you, hey, you already have it. Stop bothering me. So that's, Python being nice, by the way. So what can we do with Pillow? Let's see. Let me show you this, or let's actually look for we can go to Google and look for the documentation. It's right here. Pillow Redux. I'm opening it right here. So this is the Pillow documentation. So it's telling you Pillow is the friendly pill fork by Jeffrey A. Clark and contributors. So pill is the Python imaging library by Frederick Lund and contributors. So again, it actually tells you who built it, who you should be thankful to, that you don't have to write the code from scratch. And it tells you a little bit of everything, how to install it, what's the support it has tutorials. And here comes every single one of the functions that you're installing or that you now have access to with the pill package. All right. So let's go. Oh yeah, there's a handbook. I forgot that. Oh, pill. There's a handbook. If you go to the handbook, it gives you a little bit of everything. So in the handbook, we're going to see all that you can do, and you have a tutorial. So if you want a tutorial, you can actually go into it, and it's going to teach you how to use pill. Yeah. No, Hank, this pill is actually not hard to swallow. But so again, it's going to show you all the little details that you need, how to install it, how to do it. But the most important thing with the pill library in particular is that it's going to help us do things with files that we have on our computer. So one of the great things about programming is that we can interact with our systems. So the most important class in the Python library is called image. So image is a class, which is a type of object that has a lot of functions built onto it. So interestingly enough, it tells some of the things that we can do with it. So the first thing, so what's the first thing we should do, by the way? We already installed the Pillow library. So if we want to use it, what's the first thing I should actually do if I want to use something from this library? Exactly. I should import it. Because remember, I installed it, but I'm not using it in this particular code. And to use it in this particular code, I need to import it. That is very, very important. So it tells me that, for example, if I want to import the image class, so from pill, import image, and be careful with the capital I, very important. And then I can use it to actually create an image object. So in other words, I can take an image from my computer and put it into memory in my Python. So that becomes very important. And then I can do all kinds of things with it. But let's start actually working with it and see what happens. So we do have already preloaded on this workspace an image called file.jpg. Now, this is the whole path. Remember, just like we did on Monday, when we actually want Python to look for a particular file, we have to give it a path. So I'm going to create a variable called im for image. And this is going to be image. So that's the name of what I imported. But this is a class. And a class has a lot of functions. In particular, I'm going to use the open function. And I'm just going to copy this file. And what I have to give it is the path to where that image that I want to import is. So now I just want to do a few things. I'm going to print im.format. So this format function is going to give me what format this particular file is in. The size, so im.size, and im mode. So again, there is a file inside data images called file.jpg. And now we're going to be able to see the size of the image displayed on the terminal, or at least that's our idea. And it's actually run Python code. Yep, there you go. And I missed something. Interesting is the relative path. Apparently we don't have an image inside. That's great. Let me just see if there's im show. Thank you. Yes. You might be right on that one. Let me just make sure. Pillow, and see if this one works. No, there's no package named Pillow. It's actually named Pill. So see, the error was not in the importing. It's, let me just check where the error is. No, it's in line 2. So my problem is that I'm missing something here. Images, file.jpg. This is not finding it. I'll check it in just a bit. All right. So let's actually, give me just 1 second. Let's see if this image is available just in case. Yeah, okay. So this image doesn't exist, but the eggs image does exist. So for example, I can just open it. Exactly, there was no image called file, but there is an image called eggs, which is already loaded. So now we did. So it's telling us, again, we run the format. So it's telling us that it's in JPEG format. It's telling us the size. So it's 1920 pixels times 1277 pixels. And it's telling us the mode. So in this case, it's in red, green, and blue mode. So in other words, it has 3 layers of color, one for red, one for green, and one for blue, right? So typically, if we wanted to see the file, we could use IMShow, but Codio is not going to allow us to open the file separately. So we would actually have to go to the actual tree, which I don't have it right now. Let me just check to see if I can open it. It's fine. Let's actually see what things we can do with this. Or let me actually try to see im.show just to make sure. See what happens. So show is the file that should open the image. But again, yeah, it's opening it up here, but I can't actually see the image by itself. All right. So here's what let's actually, before we go into the second exercise, questions about the pillow. I'm going to open up in a bit and show you what it's there so we can actually play around with it. So questions about the pillow library. And again, we installed Pillow, but the actual library is called Pill. And we have several people typing. Does the pillow require fluffing? It depends on how soft you want it to be. That's it. How do we know it's called Pill? Well, here's the information. So you install Pillow, and here inside, so first of all, you have the installation part. And in the installation part, it's actually going to tell you how to install it. So again, you can actually upgrade it if you already have installed it, or if you want to install the new one, use Pillow, which is right here. So this becomes really, really important. But if you go to the tutorial, it's actually telling you that to use it, you have to import. So for example, from Pill, import image. So it's telling you, it's the Pill is the name of the library. Wow, so creating new images, that's a whole other deal. But yes, my suggestion, if you like creating images, so play around with the Pill library, that would be once. But if you like to draw, I would suggest a library called Turtle. So there's a library called Turtle, which is really, really cool for actually drawing images. All right, so let's actually take a 10-minute break. Go stretch your legs, go grab a drink, go grab a snack, and we'll be back in 10 minutes, and we're going to play with our Pill library and see what we can do with it.
All right, perfect. While we have this 10-minute break, I am going to open a poll. Okay, you will see this poll on Zoom. So, yeah, I am going to go ahead, begin broadcasting the timer, and then open up the poll. Let me just stop the recording. Okay, we are good to go.
All right. So, if, by the way, if you want, I just open up my file tree just to see where my files are on my Codio workspace. So if we go into here today, data, images, as you can see, there's this eggs file. And now we can see it. And these are these candied eggs, again, with food and candy. But great, that's the file, that's the original file, and that's the file we're going to do something to. Now, what that something is going to depend on you. So you already know how you'll already have the pillow library. You already know how to import it. We're going to just import image. And then I want you to go through the documentation for a few minutes. Do which one again, by the way? Can you do that again? What is what? Oh, the file tree. If you want to see the file tree, okay, let me open up my annotate. That's going to make it very easier. See this view button over here? I want you to click on that view button and see it says file tree. And when you click on file tree, it's going to open your file tree right here on a new tab right on your code, right beside your code file. And there you're going to be able to see all the files that you have. So again, view file tree. And boom. Well, if I'm here, let's actually close it just in case. You go view file tree. There you go. All right. So what I want you to do is go through through, it doesn't matter the tutorial, but the documentation, which I just shared again on the chat, and look for something. Just do any kind of transformation. So for example, you can actually do IM resize and just change the size of the image. You can rotate, or you can do anything you want. Just look at one of the functions that you can do, something that you think is cool to play around with the image, apply a filter or whatever you want that you find in the documentation. And I'll give you the next let's do 7 minutes. Let's do 7 minutes and you can play around with your image. And once you're done, or you can do as many transformations as you want, feel free. Every time you do a transformation, I want you to share it on the chat, just the screenshot of whatever you did, not the code. And like always, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. Now is a great time to do that. So again, two options. You can download it by clicking here for the image. So here's the image if you want to download it. But if you want to see it on Codio, you have to go into View, and inside View, File Tree. And once you click on that, it's going to appear here as a new tab. So as you can see, if you click here, there you have the file tree for the files on your workspace. So hope viewers just go into the pillow documentation and look for things you can do with it. So for example, if you go to concepts, here you're going to see a lot of the things that you can do with the image. So for example, if you want to change the size, the orientation, and you can go into the specific info that tells you exactly how to do it. So go in it and just play around with the image and do at least one transformation. So transform it into something, either rotate it, make it smaller, or anything you want. Thanks, Jorge. He just shared the documentation again. Okay. So if you go to tutorial, here it sort of tells you how to save, but I'll show you very quickly. So the best way to save is you do IM or, image, whatever the name of the image you have. So for example, in here, it would be IM. So it'd be im.save. And then if I'm not mistaken, you have to put in here whatever file you want to save it as. So for example, in here, you put a string data images x .jpeg, or, call it x2, x3, x4, or give it whatever name you want. And then it should be saved in your file tree. And so for example, if I do like right now, I am saved to, let me go back to my terminal. If I just go here and run my code, so Python code.py, nothing happens up here. But if you go into my file tree, there's x2 now. I just made another copy of the same file. I didn't do anything to it. That's a great question. You shouldn't have a problem. So the issue is that you have to save it. If you don't save it, then it's not going to show. Whatever you transform it into is not going to show. Hank, did you save it? Remember, you have to run the code. Did you give it the same name? Oh, you have to. So by the way, if you transform it and you have it open, you have to close it and you have to open it again. Because while it's open, it's not going to, this version is whatever version you opened at that time. Jennifer, transpose isn't the thing. Let's actually look for transpose. Just look at where the, oops. So yeah, transpose is a thing, by the way. Here's the code for transposing an image. Just make, those are some nice transformations. So as you can see, you can actually play around with the images and play around with the filters and the different things and transformations you can do using a library like Pillow. Oh, Jennifer, you don't have to just name it transpose. So very important. Again, you would have to call the item, like for example, I am transpose. Let's actually do that and see how it works. So the way I'm going to do this, so we start with importing image from pill. Then I'm opening up the image into a file called IM. Now this file is not, this is going to take this file and transform it into a variable inside Python. So the one that's outside and the one that's inside are not necessarily the same. And that's very important. So let's actually see what it tells us, what we can do to transpose. So for example, it says that to transpose it from left to right, this is the file that I need to, or the way that I need to actually use the method. So I'm actually going to copy that because it's very long. So it says im.transpose. So I'm calling the image file that I have. Then I'm using the transpose function. And I'm using image.transpose.flip left to right, or at least that's the way it should be done. So that's going to transform this IM into something else. And now I'm going to save it. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to save it in data. What was it? Data, images, and I'm going to save it as eggs transposed.jpg. Small one, JPG. So this should work if I'm reading everything correctly. And again, nothing happened here because it's not going to show. So I'm going to go into my file tree now. And now I have X transposed, and I'm going to open that one. And apparently this is supposed to be transposed. Looks exactly the same as the other one, doesn't it? Let me just check. Interesting. So let me try one more thing just in case. I'm going to do a little bit of a shortcut. And see if this works. Oh, let's this. I'm actually going to shut it down. X transpose. And now it worked. Now it's transposed. See, this is X, and this is flipped to the other side. Yes, you can save in Python, definitely. So great. So again, this is a very, very fun library. So my suggestion is play around with it. You can play around with it in your computer. You can play around with it in Codio, but it allows you to do all kinds of interesting stuff. But it's very important that we actually save it. So my mistake here, and I'm actually gonna, is that I should have done this. Before saving, I should have done, for example, out equals, and then I should have saved. So out.save, and then data, images, JPEG, eggs, just t.jpg. And that should actually, just to make sure that we're saving the transport version, xt, that should also be transposed, and it is. So this is eggs, this is just transposed, meaning that it was flipped on its from left to right. All right. So yeah, great work. And a great, by the way, it's a great library to learn and to have fun with. And again, the other library that I actually love, let me actually look for it, turtle library Python. And that I actually suggest if you want to use is this one. I'm actually sharing it right now. So this is a wonderful library you can use to draw. It's a drawing library, but it also helps you learn how to deal with objects, because you can build an object called a turtle and use it to draw things on the screen. So again, those are libraries you can have a lot of fun with. We're going to learn how to use other ones in the coming weeks. All right. So we've already learned how to import libraries. We learned how to install libraries and import them. How to read documentation, very important. So now the big question is, what happens when we come across an error or a problem that we have no idea how to fix at all? We've already parsed through the documentation. We've already read it. And we just can't figure it out. It happens. You go through the documentation, you think you know how it's going to work and how everything's going to turn out. You think you're going to find the answer there, and you just don't. Now, the thing that we need to understand is that it's very, very incredibly unlikely that we are the first person to ever run into that problem. I mean, it could happen, but it's not very likely. So for example, let's say that we want to build a program that prints out a ranking of the 5 most populous countries in the world, together with their position in the ranking on the left for their official and their official language. So we want to print several things based on several lists. All right, so we have countries and we have languages. Give me just 1 second. And so let's say we have these countries, this code over here. So we have countries and we have languages in 2 different lists. So countries is a list with 5 countries: China, India, United States, Indonesia, and Pakistan. And the second one, the languages, has the languages for each of these countries: Cantonese, Hindi, English, Indonesian, and Urdu. So this is one way that I could solve it. I could start with counter, create a counter variable, and it's going to start at 1. And then go into our for loops. So I could go for country in countries. I want to print the counter because that's going to be a number, the country, and languages. All right, so I want to print one thing from there. And after each loop, I'm going to do counter plus equal 1, which means every time it does a loop, I want you to do to add 1 to the counter. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. All right. So let's see what happens if I run this code. So interesting. So it turns out that it did print the 1, it did print the country, but it printed out all of the languages, not just the one that I wanted. See, I wanted 1 China, Cantonese, 2 India, Hindi, 3 United States, English, 4 Indonesia, Indonesian, and 5 Pakistan, Urdu. So this isn't working. So we got the rankings right. We got and the countries, but we got their languages wrong. And we don't want to list all the languages every time on every loop. We just want to, do 1. So how do we iterate over 2 lists at the same time? So we know how to iterate over 1 list, which we did, but how do we iterate over 2 different lists at the same time? Or can we do this? So actually, I'm going to give you a few minutes. I'm going to give you, we have time. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to try and figure it out. So what would you do? And then I'll show you how I would fix it if I had to go look it up. So what I want you to do, again, you have these 2 lists, and I want you to iterate through them so that it prints the name, the number 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the name of the country in that order, and the name of their language. So China, Cantonese, India, Hindi, United States, English, etc. with 1 for loop. But you want to loop over the 2 lists at the same time. So I'll give you a few minutes to figure it out. And let me look at some questions. And if you figure it out, or what would you do, feel free to share it on the chat. We already have 2 interesting solutions, which we'll check out in a bit. Make sure you test your code. Jennifer, yes, there's a zip function for that. Yes. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, always remember it is vital to test your code. You have no idea how many times I think in my head I came up with the perfect solution, and then I run it and it's not even close to what I expected. So here's a quick thing in programming. There's no such thing as failing. In programming, we only fail forward. That means that you don't do it. If it doesn't work the first time, we iterate again and we iterate again and we do it again and we do it again. And eventually it's going to work. All right. So I love the fact that we have several solutions. And so that's one of the very important things about coding. There is no such thing as one perfect solution. Nonetheless, the important thing today is to learn how to look for stuff when we don't know what's happening. So here was the big question that we're going to try and figure out is how to iterate through two lists in parallel, or in other words, how to iterate through two lists at the same time. So that's what I'm going to look for, how to iterate through two lists in parallel. And I'm going to do Python because I'm sure there's tons of languages. And it turns out, just like we have here, the first solution comes from Stack Overflow. So Stack Overflow is a great place for coders. Why? Because this is the place where every single programming in the world is helping every other single programmer in the world. So whenever we have an issue, You can ask your question on Stack Overflow. Well, first you look through whatever's there. If you can't find your answer, you can just post a new post, and the tons of people are going to help you. That's the reality. Or you can help other people if you know the answer. So here's the question of, I have to list, I want to iterate through them. And you go to the first answer because there's going to be several answers, but this is the one that has been upvoted the most because there's going to be more than one solution. And I'll show you that somebody else also came up with some other interesting solutions here. So it tells us that for FB in zip full bar, so this new thing called zip, print FB. So again, this is for the code that was posted, but we can actually copy it. And let's actually put it here. Of course, this is, if I try to run this, I'm going to get an error because again, I don't have foo, I don't have bar, I don't have, that's not working. So we need to actually make a few changes to this code to make sure that it's actually working. And to do that, we're actually going to change some of these things. So, but before we do that, let me actually comment this out 1 second. And I want you to think about how zip works. So I want to, let's print zip countries, languages, just to make sure we understand what this zip thing is. So interestingly enough, if I try to do this, look, this is weird. It gives me an object, zip object. Okay, so what's a zip object? Let's actually do it with a for loop and see what we get. Let's just do let's do for country language in zip countries, comma, languages. I want to print the country and the language and see what happens. So look, now I'm getting part of what I expected, which is interesting. So it turns out that the zip, and somebody mentioned it, works like a zipper. So it's going to take the match all the pieces and it's going to sort of join them together. So the first item on the countries list is going to get zipped with the first item on the languages list and so on. So now I'm actually getting the name of the country and the language right. All I'm missing is the original idea of my counter. So all I have to do is now add the counter over here, counter equals 1. I want to, before the country, I want to print the counter. And I want to make sure that it gets added, it goes up by 1 on every loop. So plus equals 1. So now this should actually work. And when I run it, I get 1 China Cantonese, 2 India Hindi, 3 United States English, 4 Indonesia Indonesian, and 5 Pakistan Urdu, which is what I expect. And we just learned how to use a new, very interesting function called zip. Nonetheless, I actually saw that there was one very interesting, let me go back. Somebody also had another interesting solution by using the indexes, which I actually enjoy a lot, which was Troy, by the way. So Troy did something similar. So he got a counter equals 1, but he did not use the zip function. And again, I'm showing you this just for us to know that there's different ways to solve the same problem with code. So counter 1, and he did for I, comma, country in enumerate countries. So this is interesting, enumerate countries. So enumerate countries is it's going to create a number for each of the items inside this thing called countries, which is sort of what we expected. So what is print? Counter, comma, country. And this is the interesting one, languages I. So the interesting thing is that this I is just going to become, because this is enumerate, this is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like the index numbers, or it should. So this is going to go into that number for each loop and pick out that language. So this should also work. Let's just check it out. And almost, it got stuck in 1, which is interesting. So that's the one thing that we should actually figure out. Why did it get stuck on 1? Because I forgot one thing. Counter plus equals 1. Because if it doesn't go up, then it's not going to change. But if I run this, it does the same thing that my older code did. So this works as well. But here's another question, because there's still another way to solve this. And yes, so by the way, zip would be a more Pythonic way to do this, but there are other ways, of course. There's always other ways. Now, we've solved it so far using this wonderful counting function, but here's let's do, yeah, that's what we did. So if we take this same snippet of code that we had before, let me actually copy it back, the original one. So we have the counter and then we're using the zip. And so what happens if we wanted to do this? And this is going to be your next challenge. What if we wanted to do this without using the counter function? Okay, this time around, we want to do the same thing, but we don't want to use the counter. So what happens if, boom, counter's gone, and we still need to get the same result? How would you do it? Yes, I'll share the code. Let's counter equals 1. Let me share this in the chat so you have it. So here's the code. Oh, that's a really, really... Well, yeah, but we want the rankings as well, Hank. That's important. We want this same result, but without the counter. So figure out, let's try and figure out another way. I'm going to put 5 minutes again, and we want to get the same result without using this counter variable. But we still want these numbers, by the way. We still want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We just can't use counter. So it's a next level challenge. I hope. When I did the zip, so let me actually comment this out for a second. So if I do this, print zip countries, languages, let me clear this out. So if I print this, it says that this is an object. So a lot of things we build in Python are going to be very particular objects that we're going to have to read the documentation, because they don't get printed, because there's nothing to actual print except code that would be relevant for us. So when that happens, it's telling you that this is a zip object. So a zip object are things that are sort of zippered together. That's it. That's all it's telling you. And this is just telling you where it is in memory, which most of the time for us is going to be irrelevant. But this is telling you not that it's an object, because practically everything inside Python is one kind of object or another, but it's telling you what type of object it is. So if you go and look up what a zip object is, it's going to explain it to you. But there's no such thing as printing it out, because it wouldn't make sense to us. I love the fact that we're getting different answers for the question. Omar, your code will work, but you will not get the rankings. So it wouldn't say one, China, two. So it would just say China, Cantonese, India, Hindi, etc. You're missing the enumerator at the beginning. So it has to say one, China, Cantonese, and so on. All right. So I love the fact that a lot of the solutions come with, oh, Hank, because it's just it's supposed to be the number one language. Not saying that there's not another, just the number one language. Just like, for example, in the US, English is just the number one language, but there are others, tons of others. All right. So I love the fact that some of you got around the whole idea, because enumerate is going to enumerate things from starting at zero, because Python is a zero index language, by just asking for the counter to just instead of the counter, for the index to be printed with a +1. So that's a good solution. But here's the thing: if we go into the documentation, which is very important, and we go, for example, into and look for what enumerate does, we'll actually see that enumerate does actually have another thing called a start. Oops, that's just start. Start. Let's see if I do start equal. There you go. So it turns out that if after the values I do start one, what it's going to do is that the count, even though it's still going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 when it comes to everything else on the indexes, the start is actually going to start this count from enumerate at 1 instead of 0. I mean, we can start at 2, we can start at 10, but there's this additional variable from the enumerate function that allows us to start at a different number than 0. So if that's the case, and we couldn't use our counter, so let me just put this back. So I'm going to remove the counter. And we're still going to use the zip function, but we're going to mix it with the enumerate function. So let's write it from scratch. So for to start our for loop, and I'm going to start with index because that's the index number, comma, and I'm going to put these two, country, comma, language in parentheses, just because I want Python to really understand that these are part of the same thing, because these are going to be part of a zip file in this case. So in this case, I'm going to do an enumerate, and I'm going to wrap. So my outer wrapper is going to be the enumerate, and then I'm going to use the zip that I'm doing, my zip function for countries and languages. And after that, this is the very important part. Let me actually open this up a little bit more. After that, I'm going to use a second argument for my enumerate, which is going to be start. And my start is going to be equal to 1. So what this is going to do is that this index, instead of starting at 0, is going to start at 1. Nonetheless, because it's going through countries and languages, it's still going to print the countries and languages in the correct order. So I do my colon over here, and then I just want to print index, country, and language. And if I didn't misspell anything, which apparently I did because I did indes instead of index, I should get my result without using the counter function. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 China Cantonese, 2 India Hindi. So this is what I expected from it. But again, the important thing is that there's tons of different ways to do the same thing. And the more functions you learn how to use, the more options you're going to have when we're trying to solve any issue or any problem when it comes to coding in Python. Now, very important, the process for resolving any issues when it comes to coding is what's called problem agnostic. So this means that you can use it for anything you may encounter. So that means that, for example, the enumerate, once you learn how to use it, you can use it for any problem. If you find an issue with something else, you can apply it to whatever other issue you find with another package. So for example, if there's an error caused by new packages, let's say you install a new package, you import it, and you're getting weird errors, read the documentation. So this is going to apply to any package. Every package out there has documentation. And if you find a package on GitHub that doesn't have documentation yet, don't use it. Wait until they write the documentation. Very important. But you'll see that every package or 99% of packages out there have very good documentation. Some better than others, but they all have good documentation. And of course, if you cannot solve it, one of the things that you can do is you can post the error code directly on Google to find an answer. Just to give you an idea, print. If I do print, hello world. So this isn't going to work. Is this going to work, by the way? And if not, why not? So this isn't going to work because hello world, there's two options, but it says it's invalid syntax. It says perhaps you forgot a comma, perhaps you forgot something else. And even so, interesting. Look, I'm going to actually follow Python's advice. It says perhaps you forgot a comma. So I'm going to add a comma. Am I going to get the same error or am I going to get a different error? So I'm going to run it again. And interestingly enough, I did get a different error. Well, so I'm getting a name error because it's saying I don't know what hello means because there's no variable called hello. And of course, it's not even going to get into world, which is the same problem. And it's going to ask something else. So let's go back to the first problem, to the first error. So let's say I don't understand this error. Believe me, these are some of them can be simple, some of them can be a little bit more complex. So you can actually just take all of this error, boom, and copy it into Google. And interestingly enough, boom, why am I getting invalid syntax? Great, first result right here, you go in here and it's going to show you several different things, but it's going to tell you what the issue might be. So one way or another, you are going to find some answer inside. Either Stack Overflow, probably, if not Reddit or somewhere else. But it's always a good idea to just copy and paste whatever error you're getting. If you want to find something on an algorithmic issue, like for example, if somebody tells you that you need to build an inverse or create an inverse of a binary tree and you don't know what it is, again, Google it. Invert a binary tree. Look, right here in lead code, this is a challenge, but you can definitely ask how to. So how to. And you're probably, let's ignore Gemma for now. And here, for example, here's a Python code with example of how to invert a binary tree. So again, if you ever get into issues looking for algorithmic issues, you can just Google them. If you need new packages, whether you want to do some filters to an image or something, let's say, well, we're data analysts. So let's actually ask Google, I need a Python package for plotting line charts. And well, first, a lot of videos. And second, and there you have, for example, the first thing that pops up from GSumBreeze is line chart in Matplotlib. And yes, hey, turns out that this is probably the library you want. By the way, as data analyst, this is a library you definitely want to learn, and you will. So again, but you can just look it up. If you want, for example, a Python package for building websites, boom, now so top frameworks, Django, CherryPy, Pyramid, Grok, TurboGear. So there's tons of them for building games. Pygame. So yeah, Pygame is probably the one that you want in this case. Top Python game engines. So you have several of them. So Pygame, Arcade, AdventureLib. So there's tons of libraries almost for anything you want, meaning that you don't have to code things from scratch. If you want to learn machine learning models, you have not SciPy, scikit-learn. You have deep learning libraries like TensorFlow or PyTorch. So there's tons of stuff out there. All right. So definitely you don't have to code from scratch. You can just take the functions from somebody else and use them as you see fit. That is the wonder of coding. So again, just to understand this, you now at this point in time know more about Python programming than 99.5% of the world's population. So it is actually estimated that less than 0.5% of the population knows how to code in any way. So you're now in the top 0.5%. You do know how to do some coding at least. And of course, not all of those people actually know Python. They might probably know another language like Java, JavaScript, etc. So congratulations, you are now part of those with the power to build code technology. And trust me, it makes a huge difference in your life very, very quickly. We're talking, if you keep at this, if you keep learning in just 2, 3, 4 years, the difference is going to be monumental. I'm talking from a lot of experience, by the way, in this particular subject. But again, with a lot of power comes great responsibility, as Uncle Ben told Peter Parker, and you must forever be humble. There's always more to learn. Believe me, there's never a day that goes by that you don't find something new to learn when it comes to programming. And hubris can be the downfall of many people with power. And yes, it has been the downfall of many programmers as well. So if you stuck to whatever language, like I'll give you probably the best example. The first, I remember hearing people a long time ago talking about Pascal. Pascal was a very powerful programming language back in the early 90s. And there's a lot of people that stuck to it until it died, meaning that you cannot find anything programmed in Pascal anymore. It just doesn't exist. So if the only programming language you know is Pascal, there's no work for you at all. There's no systems running Pascal at this point in time. So again, we need to evolve, we need to learn new things, and there's always new things to discover, especially nowadays that we're in the world of AI. But more importantly, this is a power that can do very, very powerful things. So just to give you an idea, like literally a couple of weeks back, we just finished programming an amazing AI system for developing social emotional skills. So those are the things that you can build to help other people. So you can build great things that can help a lot of people right now. Code has a lot of power. And just think about the fact that, programming languages have been around with us for about 50, 60, about 70 years, give or take. Literally, computers are still fairly new. And now we have internet, now we have machine learning, now we have AI. So things move very, very, very quickly. And all right, we have a few minutes for questions. So any questions that you have, it doesn't have to be just what we talked today. Any questions that you have about programming, we have a few minutes for them. Uncle Ben, yeah, not the rice, but Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. Any tips on best for safe installing packages? So the best way is make sure that you install packages that are commonplace, meaning that either these are from people that have tested them a lot before. So the packages that you're going to learn in this course, for example, pandas, matplotlib, numpy, they're used by thousands and thousands of developers every day. So you can trust most of the stuff that is coming from the Pipe library. If you're going to go into GitHub to find new stuff, make sure you trust the author, and make sure that you can understand the code before you actually install it. If you don't understand it and if you're not sure about it, don't, because it could have dire consequences. So, oh yeah, so if you want to learn how to do games, that's actually great. I would start after you learn a little bit more of Python. I would probably start with something like YouTube tutorials with Pygames, because it's going to help you practice your Python skills, and at the same time, it's going to start giving you this idea of how to develop games. Because there's a lot more to it than just building the game. But yeah, that's a great start, and again, it's going to help you develop your Python skills quite quickly, especially if you like building games. That's really exciting. By the way, I think the only game I've ever coded, and I am a huge video game fan, like huge, but I think the only game I ever coded was it's Rock, Paper, Scissors, Lizard, Spock. Took me a while though. Yeah, but by the way, learning how to code those kinds of things, great practice. All right. Oh yeah, so programming languages have come a long way, and that's one thing that's very important. So Python is very powerful because it's so. I'll give you an example. I know how to code in 2.5 languages. The half is because I'm just learning. So the first one is Python, and I'm very happy I started with Python. The second one is R, because in data science and data analytics, R is a great programming language. The only issue with R is that every time I try to build something that I want to connect to something else, R is not very friendly. R doesn't play well with others. It's beautiful, it's great, but it doesn't play well with others. And again, I thought, well, maybe JavaScript, but stick to Python. Like Python is so good that you can do websites, you can do games, you can do anything with Python. And the one that I'm learning now, just in case, and this is just for personal reasons, is called Dart. And Dart is a fairly new programming language that built by Google, and it works with a framework called Flutter. And the only reason I'm learning this is because it allows you to code apps at the same time that you're coding everything. So the apps will work for Android, for iOS, for Windows, and for Mac, all at the same time with one code, which is something that's fairly new. That's why I want to learn it. But again, I'm just getting started with Flutter and Dart. But again, once you learn how to code in one language, you actually will learn how to code a little bit in other languages. So for example, I have a friend that after learning how to code in Python, he started getting a lot into blockchain. So he started learning how to do, I now forgot the name of the code, Solana, Sol, one of those languages that's specifically for blockchain. So again, Solidity, thank you. Thank you. There's a new one called Solana, and thank you, Solidity. So, and by the way, once you learn how to code in one language, the other languages might be a little bit different, but the logic is the same. It's just the syntax that changes, and that's what gets you off. Like, for example, commas and colons and semicolons, things like that. But at the end of the day, it's great. How popular is SaaS in data analytics jobs? That's a really good question. So SaaS is depending on the part of the world, it is very popular still, but, and this is my big but about it, it's falling in popularity. It's one of those languages that was very, very high a few years ago, and it's coming down very quickly because there's better tools now. And so again, one of the things that you want is you want to learn the things that most people are going to need. And then if you end up in a job that where you need SAS, you're probably going to learn it on the job. But things like Python, Excel, learning how to use Matplotlib, Pandas. So those come standard now. SQL, oh, like literally SQL is going to be your best friend still today, because it doesn't matter how much Python you know, it doesn't matter how much Excel you know. If you can't do SQL to get the data that you need, your life becomes really, really hard, and finding a job becomes harder. So again, start with the tools that are going to give you the basis, and then build upon them as you specialize. But don't worry about it yet. Right now, worry about your basics, your fundamentals, and if those are strong, everything else is going to come as much, much easier. And again, this is somebody that learned all of this later in life. When I know people tell you that it's harder to learn, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure I agree. But yeah, I had to start from scratch. And still, if your fundamentals are there, everything else is going to be a lot easier. So practice. Yes, and review SQL. SQL is going to be your best friend forever. All right. So that's great. And I think I'll see you in a couple of weeks for, I forgot. I
Yeah,
think
we
it's,
have to review that because I also forgot that.
but I have it in my calendar. It's always in my calendar. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks for Pandas Bootcamp. Oh, Pandas. Yes, I love Pandas. Wonderful. So we're going to go over Pandas. So where you're going to learn to do Excel inside Python. So have an amazing weekend, everyone, and we'll see you then.
Thank you so much for this session, Jack. Just a